We might have just witnessed one of the worst weeks in Nintendo history, and although the highs were high, boy oh boy were the lows low. And although most of this was completely avoidable, all of this can be boiled down to three major factors, starting with the questionable decisions they made during the Direct. It was undeniable that the Switch 2 Direct was one of the best Directs we've ever seen. Of course, it's like anything else in life, there's definitely going to be a couple of people that say, oh wow, it sucked, but for the most part, a lot of people really did enjoy it. And after they were done talking about the hardware, they went on to talk about a specific little game here called Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. As they were explaining this game, I was head over heels in love with the idea. But I do understand that some people probably didn't think it was that exciting, but for me, I personally really enjoy museums and art galleries. So for me, the thought of being able to interact with the Switch 2 and kind of learn about it in the same style of a museum was really cool and novel. But here's the thing. The second that they said that this was going to be a paid experience, my immediate thought was, fuck, it's 1-2 Switch all over again. I quickly braced myself for the price tag and I was sure it was going to be a full price game. However, I just waited and waited until they just kind of moved on to the next announcement, and they never bothered to actually say how much it's going to cost. But that was just the beginning of a trend that lasted for the entirety of the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. Because not a single thing that was featured in the Direct had a single price tag. And I have three theories on why Nintendo decided to do this. First off, and of course the most likely, they knew they were going to get backlash over the new prices, and they didn't want to distract anyone of what was happening and how cool and exciting it is just to be here watching this Direct. My second theory, and this one's going to sound a little bit silly, but this is specifically for the software. There's a chance that they might have just literally plain out forgot, because if you look at literally every other Nintendo Direct, they never have to necessarily say how much a game costs because we just already know. Just the problem with that is the definition of a full price game has changed, so it's not really fair to us, the viewers, to not be informed about this until we go on our own separate venture to go out and find it ourselves. Then my third theory is about the hardware itself, because we already know that around in September of last year, Nintendo started to record footage for this reveal. Personally, what I imagine happened is when Nintendo was putting this whole reveal together, they probably had an idea of how much the console was going to cost, but they probably just didn't put the nail in the coffin just yet. But of course, we're going to talk about this more a little bit later. The second massive point is misinformation. Generally speaking, misinformation is rampant on the internet, and currently it's no different in the Nintendo fandom. And if I had $1 for every misleading tweet I saw, well, I'd be able to get the Switch 2 without any issues whatsoever. I also just want you to keep in mind that this story is evolving, so there's still a slew of new information and disinformation that is still surfacing. But let me go over a few examples. First, there was the rumor that Mario Kart World was going to be $80 if you bought the digital copy, and $90 if you wanted it physical. This turned out to just completely not be true, and both for the digital and physical version is going to be $80. To which I understand why people are upset about it, and they're totally allowed to be upset about that. It's totally okay. It's just, if we're going to be mad at something, let's be mad at something that exists. Then there was a rumor that literally every Nintendo game was now going to be starting at $80, to which of course also ended up not being true, because the new Donkey Kong game is $70, which of course is still a tough pill to swallow, but it's still a little better. Then there was a rumor that the Nintendo Switch 2 edition games were just Switch 1 copies of the game in the Switch 2 case, including a download code so you can have the upgrade. And turns out that's also not true, because everything is included on the cart when you open the box and plug it into your Nintendo Switch 2. Then there was some confusion about the game keys. There was a lot of people that were under the impression that a lot of games for Switch 2 was just going to be simple download codes that were in the box, meaning there weren't going to be any cartridges, or the cartridge that you can find inside the box is going to be used for a one-time download. But the way these game keys actually work is that when you buy a game, the game key is going to download the game to your Nintendo Switch, and you can only play the game if the cartridge is in your Nintendo Switch. However, if you do want to borrow this game to a friend, they can take it, and it will also download the game on their Switch, and they also can play the game. Basically, once the game is downloaded for the first time, it essentially just works like a normal cartridge would. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, but that's neither here or there. The point is, there was still a lot of confusion and misinformation around the game keys. Also worth noting, not every game will be like this. And that's just scratching the surface of the misinformation. But why is this happening? Well, it's because there's just so much information out there, both the good and the bad. And because of this, back in the day, you used to be able to see information, then build an opinion on it, but since there's just so much info out there now, a lot of people have started creating opinions and then retroactively go dig for information that's going to support their opinion, whether it's correct or not. Then of course, the third big factor is the elephant in the room, the tariffs. Of course, as we are now aware, pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2 will no longer be going live on April 9th because of the incoming tariffs. And this of course is only for people that live in the United States. So, since Nintendo is pausing pre-orders, it's clear that they're reconsidering the price of the Switch 2. And of course, by default, there's only 3 possibilities. It's either the price goes up, it stays where it is, or it goes lower. Of course, lowering the price is possible, but I really wouldn't be waiting for it because Nintendo, at the end of the day, is not a charity, and they're here to make a profit. Comparing to lowering the price, I do think it would be more realistic for them to just keep the price as is, but this will surely eat into their profit margins, and as I stated, Nintendo is not a charity, so I still kind of have my doubts that they'll do that either. What I imagine is the most likely to happen is Nintendo is going to, of course, pass on the cost to the consumer, meaning the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the States will go up. Now, even though I did find this post that said that Nintendo didn't keep in mind tariffs when deciding the price of the Nintendo Switch 2, once I click on the article is not about that at all, but assuming that this post is in fact telling the truth, why on earth would Nintendo ever admit that they already had tariffs in mind when deciding the price of the Nintendo Switch 2? Because that would literally just be them admitting that they bumped up the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 twice. So personally, I don't feel like it's that big of a stretch to believe that they just so happened to price the Switch just high enough that the tariffs weren't necessarily going to interfere with their profit margins. The good news about this is if this is in fact true, Nintendo won't have to raise the price all that much to meet the profit margins that they were expecting of the console, because there was already that built-in padding, meaning for consumers in the United States, hopefully the price won't be going up all that much. But whatever Nintendo decides to do, just know that they are the ones in fact losing in every situation. Because it's either Nintendo is going to lose some of their profit margins, or they're going to lose some of Nintendo fans' trust. But there is one thing Nintendo can still do to turn all of this around. But before I get into that, I have a short message. If this is your first time here, hey, my name's Acadrien and I post weekly Nintendo videos just like this. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, I would greatly appreciate it if you would simply consider to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's go right back into the video. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that most of this was avoidable. And the reason why it was avoidable is because it was predictable. Even the whole tariff situation was semi-predictable because it was something that we've known about for months at this point. Of course, nobody could have known what the percentages and stuff were going to be. But other than that, Nintendo should have known that people were going to have a lot of questions about the brand new system. Especially considering the fact that a lot of this information and, by force turning into misinformation, is caused because Nintendo just doesn't want to communicate with us clearly. They don't want to just talk to us straight out. Instead of communicating directly with the audience and the consumers that will be buying their product, instead they're choosing to go through journalists and retailers to relay the message for them. It's almost like they're talking in the third person. Now, it's not to say that they can't do that and that's a bad idea. Certainly they should be communicating with the journalists and the retailers, but they should be doing that in concert with the consumers. But then the funniest part about this is that I literally made a video exactly about this 1 week ago, because the week before the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, there was a regular Direct, where they launched a specific app that is meant to deliver news to consumers like us. And they even said that they were going to be talking about the Switch 2 every single day on that app. And then I totally understand that all of these posts are most likely pre-scheduled. But I mean, they quite literally created an entire platform specifically to talk to us. But yeah, I don't know, it's just unfortunate how everything kind of just played out. But now I want to hear from you. How do you feel about the Nintendo Switch 2 1 week later? Let me know down in the comments below. I would once again like to thank you for watching the video all the way to the end, and if you did enjoy this video, why not check out another one? For whatever reason, YouTube thinks that you'll enjoy this one, so try checking out that one next. And until next time, Wad out.